It just says recording in progress. So now this is potentially the first episode of our long awaited Everything is a Scam podcast, or Everything is a Scamcast, because I think somebody else already reserved the name Scamcast. So, whatever, everything is a scam. And my father's been wanting to say something scam related. So now I'm giving him the opportunity to tell it to the world. So,
Are you
where do you
going?
want to start?
Are you going to introduce both of us?
Oh, right, sure. So I am Lee J. Heller, recording this from a small room in Madrid, Spain. And this is my father, Lee Howard Heller, in an undisclosed location, unless you want to tell people where you live.
No.
All right, let's leave it that way. So, what has you so excited to finally make me record this?
Well, this really is not so much the Scamcast yet. This is more a realization of the terrorizing current events in America right now that I wanted to comment on, and that is the ongoing discussions in the media and I don't know where else of the cause of these terrible mass shootings and uh, uh, violent occasions that are constantly happening all the time. Seems more like ever before, but maybe the coverage is more uh, uh, more responsible for pointing it out. Maybe this was always been there, but I don't think so. I think it's a new trend in our culture, in our country, and I see a new plateau in the fear and hatred quotient. A lot of talk comes up every time there's a mass shooting of what the causes are, and I've listened to it, and it always seems to be helpless and hopeless. The reasons and solutions are far apart. Some of the standard conversations is thoughts and prayers don't really solve anything. Um, the other thing is that guns are responsible. So many guns, yeah, it's a problem, but that is not the cause. And then there's the mental illness explanation or rationalization, but that doesn't work because the human species has a 3.5% global occurrence of mental illness. So it doesn't matter what country you're in, there's mentally disturbed people everywhere. But it seems that in America, that is being pinned as the cause for so much gun violence and shootings. But obviously, that's not the cause. The real causes, in my view, are you have this fear and hatred being supplied by our corporatocracy, causing most Americans, the majority of Americans, to live a fractured, terrorized, day to day lifestyle caused by an inability to cover the costs. We've gone through 3 years of a pandemic without universal health care. And actually, the health care is being reduced. The Supreme Court just did away with the Roe versus Wade. So now women will be getting less health care available. Um, Looking at the other some of the other indications, why is the abortion issue so intensely ingrained in the corporatocracy, which you never seem to hear. But my opinion, strong opinion, is there is a um, medical industrial complex in our country. It's global, where the doctors are not working for us, the patients. They're working for the corporation that they're on the payroll to. So the corporations are basically controlling our healthcare. And if you compare the cost of an abortion being around $750 and the cost of a birth in a hospital being somewhere around $10,000, you could see where there would be some strong, very strong lobbying from that medical complex to do away with abortions and make everybody have live births. These are some of the ministrations that are happening, causing incredible pressure on Americans of all locations and statuses and classes, if you will, except for the ultimate rich. And God knows there's plenty of them. Why is there such fear and hatred? Well, it brings up to mind a thought that I had just today. You know, when computer viruses came out, I remember the discussions with people scratching their heads and saying, you know, why? Why are people making computer viruses? And they weren't at that time. They weren't making money at it. They were just, to quote another source, burning down the house because they could. So that attitude, that mental positioning, that I don't care how this affects my community, I can do it. So I can shoot the people up. I can poison them. I can do all kinds of things with no justice served to me. That's the other problem we've seen in my recent livelihoods and decades. The economic disaster 2007-8, where 100 million Americans lost their homes, lost their retirement savings, and nobody went to jail. I remember the stories being recounted by workers that were being paid minimum wage to fraudulently sign banks' executives' signatures on the papers to foreclose on people. So this incredible fraud machine, which will soon become the segue to our scam central discussion, is a very unhealthy situation. Today's International Day of Remembrance for the Holocaust. And we can see that type of hatred rising up. We can see the violence rising up. I spent my whole life scratching my head wondering why the German people, the most educated, religious, well-informed populations in the mid-last century, could be hoodwinked by the Nazi regime. And it didn't make any sense until a decade ago, where we could see how it's starting to work, the same injustice and strife in America. So I just wanted to get that out, get it off my chest. I don't know if it makes sense to you. It makes very clear sense to me. Again, my government has miraculously lowered my insulin costs from $650 a month to $35 a month. but that's because I'm on Medicare and I'm a senior. So what happens to everybody that's younger than 65? They got to pay $650 a month for their insulin, or they could buy a fentanyl pill for $2 off the street. So where is that competition making sense? Which direction are people being pushed? So that's my rant for this time that I felt I had to share.
Okay, well, none of that was funny in any way, but it was certainly on point. I
Right.
just wanted to, while you were talking, I didn't want to interrupt you at all until you were ready to stop, just to try to be as factually accurate as possible. So, at least according to a few articles that I've read here, that it says nearly 10 million people lost their homes during the Great Recession, which is still bad and still
Right.
terrible. But
Okay.
and again, what my segue would be is I've said this to people for years, and I still haven't gotten a good answer. I just took an economics class on U.S. domestic and foreign economic policy, and even that professor never answered the question. But during the Great Recession, instead of bailing out all the banks, why didn't they give money to all the people whose homes were foreclosed? Because all that money was going to go to the banks anyways. It's just through the individuals.
So wait a minute. So to enhance that question, the banks were paid by us taxpayers through the TARP plan, it was called.
Right.
They just handed money to the banks from the national tax rolls that all Americans were responsible to pay. They also had, in most cases, collected on the mortgage insurance that the homeowner had to pay for, but the benefit goes to the lien holder, which was the bank. So the bank got paid by the U.S. government. The bank got paid by the insurance companies, and oh, by the way, they ended up with the title to the property. So they were triple dipping.
And no one, I mean, I've certainly never heard anyone talk about that aspect of it, that they actually get the insurance also.
Right, right,
It's kind of like how we talked about how people don't think about all those people if they can't pay for their car and their car gets repossessed, they take the car and you still owe the money on the
right.
car. So you're double screwed.
And you could have paid $5,000 to $10,000 for the last year or years. That money's gone.
Right. All the money that you have paid is gone.
Right.
So I guess where this goes in my head, it makes me feel like is the way that I'm seeing it, maybe the way that you're seeing it. I just feel like as a guy who grew up in the United States, lived in the United States for most of his life, and then has spent most of the last, I'd say, it's almost a decade now, on and off, but mostly living overseas. To me, it seems that most things in the United States, for the majority of people, are designed and hope that you fuck up and you can't pay. It's designed to screw you.
Yes.
Because they benefit more, like they want you to not pay for your house. They want you to not be able to pay for your car, because if you can't, then they take it, they have the car or the house, and you still owe the money.
You know, EJ, before Reaganomics, when the prime lending rate would get adjusted, and the interest rates would be reduced or increased. I remember back then, the during an inflation period, there was interest rates at 18%. So now your savings account, you were getting about 7 or 8% interest for money you had, but your credit card was at about 18%. But what was funny is when that prime rate was adjusted, the credit card interest rates moved with it. So when the interest rates went down, the credit card rates went down. That got unlinked during the Reaganomics, so that the credit cards just charge 30% interest right now. If you open up a card, if you're a card owner or a troubled, bad, bad credit score customer, the interest rate is 30%. Let's say 25 to 30%. The savings rate is 0.3% interest.
Well, and I wanted to say that your tenant that you currently have living in the upstairs portion of your house, who shall remain nameless, didn't he say he has like a 20% interest rate on his car payments?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Doesn't that seem insane?
Yes.
And
I mean, I have 4.5% interest. But then that's because I have a great credit rating.
Well, let's segue into that briefly. So we talk about how last summer, basically, because your old Xterra, your 2004 Nissan Xterra that you had for, I want to say, almost 20 years, it seems. Is that fair to say? Almost 20 years?
No.
At least 15? I'd say at least 15, around 15 years. But how many miles? How many miles did that have on it?
150,000.
And you basically drove it till it died, until it became untenable to keep fixing it. What was the final death of that car? What happened that made you dump it finally?
The final death was the brake cables broke. And the brake lines were rusted out, and the exhaust system was rusted out, and the chassis was rusted out.
Okay, so it was dead.
It was falling apart. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that happened, and for a while you didn't have a car. And when I came back to visit, I said, "You need to have a car to get around." So we went to buy a car, but just due to, of course, our timing and luck was like the worst possible time to buy a used car in recent memory. For whatever reason.
That was the supply chain disaster where there was no new cars and there were no used cars.
Which meant that even the shittiest cars that were available were at an outrageously high price.
Right.
So we went shopping. We went to that Nissan dealership, and all they had were like pickup trucks that were like $60,000 or more.
72,000.
No,
we drove to New Jersey to buy a used Xterra that didn't work.
Well, no, and that's the thing. You love that Xterra so much, and you were willing to buy it. You would have bought that Xterra if they weren't trying to sell you a complete piece of shit.
Right.
Like it actually had it had a Bluetooth player. I think it was around this. I think it had like only like 70,000 miles or something even less. It had like a ridiculous low amount of miles on it, and you want to buy it, but they tried.
Didn't it have? It didn't 4-wheel drive. It didn't have 4-wheel drive.
I think the 4-wheel drive was busted.
Right.
And there was something else wrong with it. But the point I'm saying is like you would have bought that if it wasn't a complete scam car.
Right.
Like if it was a little bit less of an obvious scam, you probably would have bought it.
Right.
And I don't remember how much they wanted for it, but it was within reason. Also, we wouldn't have rented a car and drive it all the way down to frickin' New Jersey just to buy a, was it 2015? I think it was at least relatively new Xterra, or maybe not, but either way, it had low mileage on it. But they try to full. That's what I mean. Like you can get by scamming people a little, you know, if they at least fix the 4-wheel drive. It at least wasn't like scamming you right to your face. They probably would have gotten away with it, but they did, and he didn't buy it. So we ended up going we went to the dealership, like I said, this $76,000 pickup truck or whatever. And then we saw that couple that were so happy that they were buying a car, and we just knew how screwed they were.
I'm sure they already don't have it.
Right. It's already been repossessed.
Right.
But when we went to buy your car, we ended up finding you a used RAV4 a 2011 RAV4 that already had over 100,000 miles on it.
Yes.
and everyone thought you were insane for doing that.
Yes.
But you seem really happy with that car,
Yes.
so that's not the worst thing in the world, I guess.
Right.
And you're going to drive this car until it's dead. But unfortunately, you just had to buy it at the worst possible time. But
Right.
at least you got a good rate.
I got a great rate, and I got a good vehicle, even though it has so many miles. So I've already had it for what, a year and a half?
Yeah,
Yeah,
about a year and a half
year and a
now.
half. And I've really had, I bought one set of tires, which every car has to do. And I have some plastic part replacements. But the only real repair so far was the differential that Toyota fixed. That cost almost $1,000.
Oh,
But so be it. Like I said, the local Toyota dealer and service operation has about 75 to 100 employees. And so as I told the employees that were helping me, that I wince at the high prices they charge, but I accept them because I know at least they're giving good jobs with benefits to a lot of people instead of robots.
well, we can hope that they're
And
getting paid.
you know what they said?
What they say.
They're trying to make robots to do our job.
Of course.
Of course.
That's what nobody's safe from the robots and the
Right.
automation and the AI. That's what
Yeah.
no one wants to really accept that. I know what always got you is that they've gotten rid of all the toll booth takers. There's
Right.
no toll booth operators anymore.
So that's 100,000 jobs in America lost.
And I've always said I've never been one to stop progress just for the sake of having jobs, but I also feel there should be okay if you're gonna make all these jobs obsolete and all these people have no jobs, then what do you do with these people?
Right.
What no, but I'm at like what would you do if you
What would I
were
do?
yeah
I would make them devote a certain percentage of human versus robot jobs.
so you like kind of like which states
So,
what are the, wait,
so,
what are the
so, so, if you to answer to consider your question, it's a great question. So we're going to go from where the technology is now. So you have the Amazon store in New York City, where you walk in and you pick stuff off the shelf and you walk out the door because the technology rings it up into your account automatically. So there's no more cash registers, there's no more cashiers, there's no more self checkout. It's completely automated digitally. So you go from that to where I grew up in Levittown at the A&P. The guy used to have to grab the food on the counter and ring it up on the cash register manually to okay, now they want me to do my own checkout, my own bagging, my own carrying, but they still have cashiers for now. Those cashiers will eventually go away till there's all either self checkout or auto checkout. Like
you know
Amazon.
what I'm probably I bet you before I'm dead they'll get rid of all the cashiers.
Right, right.
But
So what do
I'll
you,
but I'll
so
st-
the answer,
but
yeah,
they'll still have self it won't be fully automated because they still want self-service checkout because then the burden's on you
right,
just to make it that much worse.
right. So to answer your question, I would say you need to have the government socially control,
Ah, socialist,
yeah,
communist.
socially control what percentage of those cashiers stations in the supermarket have to provide a job to a human. A certain percentage, maybe 15 to 20% of the checkouts have to be humans.
I mean,
By by force,
I
by
was,
force.
I was gonna say they probably have to have at least some humans like maintain the machines, but then I'm like, no, they'll have other robots that'll clean the machines, and you know what I mean.
That's a
So
commercial on TV. It's already, I forget what company it is. shows you that their ad isn't that good because I don't know who it is. But they're saying that our robots maintain themselves.
Right. And
So,
I know you hate that ad. That was it. Was it? Is it paychecks or something like? Do
oh
your.
no, no, that bitch, man, I could kill her.
Is
Their
that what it is?
spokesper-
Is it paychecks or something else?
I
I
don't
don't
think it's
remember.
no, it's a competition to paychecks. And that's
But it's
basically,
like do your own HR.
yeah, this is to the small business owner, make your employees maintain and handle their HR needs through our app so that they track their vacation time and they track their health insurance. And you can do away with your HR person and department
Right.
and let the employees manage themselves at their time, at their cost. So
But
yeah, it's tell me it's not a reality.
but that's what I mean. I mean, logically, if it continues in that way, isn't there going to be a point where like 90% of people don't have jobs? Then what?
Absolutely, yeah. So you have to legislate. Japan went through this about 2 or 3 decades ago. They had achieved a level of automation even beyond America, and robotized almost everything. And I remember the report that they were forcing companies to pay workers to work at the gas stations to wipe your windshield and pump your gas. Forced to do that because they had, I don't know if we have time for this, but I can share a personal story when I worked for Canon.
No, please. The more personal stories, the better. I think.
So
Go
I
for it.
was the national sales manager to sell their ultra thin floppy disk, 5.25-inch floppy disk drive into the computer manufacturing business when the PC computer business was expanding and booming. And I worked for a Japanese company that was very much Americanized because it had been one of the first Japanese companies before the onslaught due to their camera works. That the founder had found a piece of glass in Hiroshima that was melted
Okay.
and realized it was a lens and made camera from it. So when I went I was sent to Japan to go to the factory. Now, the factory was there because they had just about a brand new factory set up, very automated, and they were struggling because they lost the German BASF account. And I was able to sell a compact computer, which was hot stuff at the time. They came out with their portable too, and it had the Canon super thin floppy drive in it that I got designed in and saved their factory. So I was sent over there, and I remember in the factory, one of the directors showing me the tables with the Japanese ladies with the white the kerchiefs on their head, almost like in a sterile environment, and they were hand wrapping the wire for the heads on the disk drives, on the floppy drives. There was, a line, and there was 50 of them. And the director, he was so happy. He was this big guy. He's smiling. He said, "Oh, next month, we get the robots, and we don't need these workers anymore." And I said, "Well, what's going to happen to all these women?" He says, "Oh, not my problem. That's HR department." So it was my personal experience of, well, wait a minute, this is like what's going to happen to them. So the HR department would have, at that time, had to find a way to place all these employees in other positions in other places in their corporate world. And that went on for a couple of decades. And then Japan's economy, which has been struggling for decades now, basically said, you know what? They're out of a job. Not our problem.
So they at least used to care enough to try to find them a new job?
Right, right. So, when you get laid off from a company, back in the day, they would help you find another position. Not anymore. You're out of here. Goodbye. Got your pink slip. Elon Musk just wrote you off. Amazon's computer realized you're been there working for them for 3 years, and that's the expiry date.
Yeah, that's the good emotionless term, right? Expiry date. I don't know the exact amount of time, but you're right. I think I remember hearing there's some sort of algorithm they've figured out where they hire a worker for a certain amount of time that is their like maximum productivity, and as soon as the calculations determine that there is no productivity left or less, then they just like get an automated email saying you're fired.
Right, automated.
I don't know if, again, who knows if that's true. We'll see. But
well, if it isn't true, it will happen.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true also.
I mean, I used to have to fire people. It was a terrible thing to do. Nobody likes to
now
fire
it's going to be
people.
Now it's going to be through like text or Instagram message, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Wasn't that how the Trump administration got rid of people?
I know that's how they fired that. I know he fired what's that Rex Tillerson guy by tweet.
Right.
So it's already happening. Yeah. So,
yeah.
God, that was such a long time ago, it seems now. Remember when he's considered good in hindsight? Like
right.
The first round of people that worked for him were like had some minimally acceptable like qualities to them.
Right, because Trump wasn't sophisticated enough to know who was a real shithead and who wasn't.
Right. Like, hey, he just hired a CEO of an oil company to be the Secretary of State. Well, that makes no sense at all. That's like blatant corporatocracy shit like that. But then apparently he was like head of the Boy Scouts or something also. So I guess he had like bare minimum sort of decency.
Right.
Which is why he got fired.
And he called Trump a moron.
Yes. He was either a moron or a fucking idiot. I forgot which one. Or maybe it was a fucking moron. I forgot what exactly it was. But yes, that was the first round. Or like Mad Dog.
Right.
The Secretary of Defense. We thought that was insane, but it turned out he had like some minimal decency also, I guess. But again, we're still talking like they're still bad.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So that's some of the scam stories. The automation is really it's a big challenge. All it does is it harkens me back to Star Trek, First Contact, where the black lady's trying to figure out who's getting paid to do all this. What was the answer?
They don't get paid because they're
not interested. They're not interested in money. Just how to improve themselves.
Yeah, well, that's too socialist, and whatever. Don't forget, in order for the universe of Star Trek to exist, it took World War III to happen and aliens. Right. By the way, so it took those two things to happen. People often neglect to mention that part, and even in the context of Star Trek, like. When that's like the kind of the one redeeming value of Star Trek Enterprise. Actually, compared to most of the news shows, Star Trek Enterprise is actually pretty good. At least it still has the essence of what Star Trek's supposed to be. Right. But like the way humans were presented is like the stupid broke ass because we were new to traveling the galaxy, so we were like a joke in the context of the show. But
right. But now Enterprise is at least worth its own time to watch, sort of like Nixon's no longer the worst president,
Yeah. Nixon's ghost is probably pissed off like, what? He got away with all of that? And I had to resign. What the fuck? Yeah. So anyway, so by the way, so it looks like Zoom sucks now because we used to be able to talk for like hours on end, and now we have 2.5 minutes left
And
on
then
this
what happened?
video. Then I think it'll stop recording, so we can try to
Do
just make.
we just make a new one?
I think that might work, unless they're really shitty and they won't let you do that. We can try.
Let's
Want to
try and
try?
see what yeah.
All right, so we'll stop right now and then see if there's more way to, if they'll let us just do another video. So
All
hold
right.
on for a second. All right, stop recording now. All right, so we're back now, and I just wanted to follow up on something you said earlier about the actual cost. How much does it cost to have a baby?
Right.
And everything is suspect these days, especially since it's coming from a Forbes article. But of this month, January 3rd, 2023, it says that the average cost of giving birth is $18,865,
Oh,
according to the Peterson Kaiser Family Foundation Health System Tracker, whatever that means. Health insurance can cover most of that cost, but if you don't have health insurance, you can expect a hefty bill. So I've heard it used to be much more than that. That's still a ripoff because I always talk about the story of my friend in Hong Kong who got his wife pregnant. He went to a semi-private hospital, and I think the whole process of his wife having a baby cost like $100. That's it.
yeah.
So explain that.
That's the medical industrial complex at work.
Oh, right. If we have another 40 minutes, we can talk about your whole bullshit experience when you had to go to the hospital for like a week. When it cost you $500,000.
Yeah.
So how
So
the hell?
back in 2017, I had a number of medical issues. I did have Medicare, but I had been duped. I had Medicare Advantage, which is not really Medicare. It's a fake Medicare. It's just insurance companies. And while I had total billings for the year without medicine, this is with just medical care, one was it 1.6 million?
Oh, I don't know about you talking about your medicine
No,
or just your health care.
the health care.
Oh, I don't know about that. All I remember is that you showed me the medical bill from your stay at the hospital. It was over $500,000. I know that.
Right. So the total for the year was 1.6 million,
Ah, okay.
which
Yeah.
I think included my medications. So, yeah, luckily I had Medicare of some sort because I ended up spending 12, about $15,000 of my own money.
Just on medicine,
No, on everything.
on everything.
Right. So that's because I was of Medicare age, and I'm always horrified to think of, well, what about all the 64-year-olds and the 54-year-olds and the 44-year-olds and the 34-year-olds and the 20, what? What are they out of their minds?
And the part of the plan they're talking about now is they want to increase the age of eligibility.
All right. Yeah, of course. Because we're living longer,
Right.
but we're not living happily longer.
Oh, well, let's not talk about happiness.
Why not?
That's not.
Shouldn't that be part of the human condition?
Yeah, but that's not like, that's some communist mindset.
That's like back in the day, they used to not call them policemen and police officers. They called them peace officers. Remember that
Well,
word? Remember the word peace?
Officer of the peace. Yeah, let's not talk about that. We're so far gone from
All
that.
right, keep going. I'm just going to get up for a minute.
You're getting your SpaghettiOs. Oh, no,
Yes.
stop calling them SpaghettiOs. You're giving them too
Why?
much credit. It's Chef Boyardee spaghetti and meatballs.
Oh, it's the same shit.
Get it right. Well, that might be true. It's probably all made in the same factory somewhere. But you know
Right.
what? I know it's poison, but I like the spaghetti and meatballs from Chef Boyardee because its metallic taste reminds me of the 90s.
Right.
And the 90s, at least for me, maybe just because I was a kid at the time, but to me, the 90s was the pinnacle of Western civilization.
Okay.
So I want your opinion on that once and if you get back. Wait, so so let's have the completely irrelevant, pointless, stupid discussion on why you like Chef Boyardee ravioli better than the spaghetti and meatballs.
Because the meat stuffing is spicier in the raviolis than the meatballs.
So you just like the slight taste of fake poison spice.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. I'll allow it. I mean, I'd still
Right.
eat it. I'll still eat it. I would eat it. But as I said, as I live in Madrid now, you can actually go to specialty American stores to buy American food like Chef Boyardee and Pop Tarts and things like that. But it's at a higher, it's obviously at like it's considered import price.
No, you
So
should probably order it online from China because that's probably where all of it's made anyway.
I don't know. That'd be good to know. Where is Chef Boyardee actually made? Let me look that up while you continue to talk about your healthcare fraud experience.
Right.
Well, do you want to start from the beginning, or at least do the abbreviated version? Well, do you remember how it started? You first went to the Kingston Hospital because you had, was that when you had the skin irritation reaction to a previous health issue, right? Is that what happened?
Yes, I had an ulcer on my foot, diabetic ulcer on my foot, and the podiatrist uh, gave me bad medical advice, and I was trying to treat it at home with wet, dry dressings every day, twice a day, and it got worse. And then my primary doctor said I needed antibiotics, and he put a prescription for Bactrim, and I took the Bactrim, and it turned out I was severely allergic to it, and I developed oozing blisters all over my arms and legs, and had to go to the hospital. So, was that when you were here?
Yes, well, I was definitely there. Remember, you were sprawled out on in the hospital bed, the Kingston Hospital, and just by coincidence, had CNN on, and that's when we
Oh
had
yeah,
right. Remember
right.
we were watching a debate between Bernie Sanders and Ted Cruz about healthcare. Remember?
Yes, Bernie Sanders and Ted Cruz about healthcare, saying both of them agreeing that in America the medical costs were towering above all other developed countries' medical costs.
But of
So,
course, they have completely different uh, resolutions. I can't even think to fix it.
right. So
And Ted Cruz would say privatize everything.
right,
You know,
because the government is inefficient. Um, so while we're watching it, I'm in the emergency room at 2 in the morning waiting for their dermatologist, and the emergency room doctor said to me that they don't have a dermatologist on staff, and said I would have to be transferred to Valhalla Hospital uh, because there would be a dermatologist there.
so
So,
yeah,
yeah,
two things. First of all, you could have gone to Northern Duchess Hospital, which was like 20 minutes to a half an hour away, but they
right.
wanted you to go to Valhalla Hospital, which was 2.5 hours away. What
Because
was
same
why?
same corporation.
So I was want to say, so it's the same corporation thing.
Right.
So of course that doesn't make any sense. That's just strictly profit thing because they also made you take the ambulance there,
Right.
even though you weren't actually having an emergency. like a life-threatening emergency. So they made you
Right.
get in the ambulance.
You took me to the emergency room.
I took you to the emergency room, but when they took you to the Valhalla hospital, they made you take the ambulance. Which, tell me how much that cost you.
That was like 350, and it was the most uncomfortable ride. They put me on a gurney that was half my width, so I couldn't even put my arms down. And it was snowing, and it was dark, and you were trying to follow.
Oh yeah, that's when I was driving in the Taconic Parkway
Right.
during a snowstorm. Somehow I survived.
Somehow you made it. And I got to the hospital in Valhalla, and they immediately started all of my blood tests that had just been taken at the Kingston Hospital,
Right.
and had the reports and the results to the doctor. And I said, can you just have them fax the report? And they said, no, we have to do it ourselves. So they basically doubled the cost to Medicare because they can. So that
Well,
was,
and she promised you that there'd be a dermatologist there when you got there, which was a lie.
which of course there wasn't.
Right.
And I stayed there for a couple of days, didn't I?
You were there for at least a week, I think.
Really?
From what I remember, maybe 5 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was duplicate billing within an hour, or about an hour between the two. They had to do the tests all over, and that's like $1,000
Yeah.
bill. So that was a perfect representation of what Bernie and Ted Cruz were talking about. I understand that the Europeans and the Asian countries that are advanced, they have medical cards that has all your information for everybody to see.
Well, this is when I can step in because I've lived in so many different countries now, and I still say, though I say I'm having a little bit more fun in Madrid, I will say that Taiwan, I had a better overall quality of life, and part of that was the healthcare system there. Because even though I was not part of the system, or I was not a citizen rather, I was still part of their national health system. And you get a card, and it has all your information on it. You can go to any doctor you want. And I tell people all the time that when I was there, you can pretty much go to any doctor without an appointment, and you can get seen by a doctor. You can get all your tests, blood tests, urine, all your medication for like $6. And and that's including they take out a little bit of money from your paycheck every day.
Yeah.
Or every month. But yeah, I mean, I'd gladly do that and then pay $6 than whatever the scam I'm going to get back in the US. And then I went to the dentist once, a private dentist, mind you, using the health insurance card. And I thought, when I went there, it was free. I thought it was going to be free. So when I first got there, I was pissed off because it wasn't free.
Right.
And then I found out how much it costs to see the private dentist. And I was there. I got there. I got x-ray, teeth cleaning, and I was out of there in like 45 minutes. And it only cost me like $1.50.
Oh, God.
So I shut up after that once I realized I was only paying $1.50. So, and I'm not even a citizen of Taiwan. So, and Taiwan's not even a real country,
right,
to most of the world. That's a whole other conversation.
So if they could do it, the question is, why can't America do that?
Well, as I've come to my realization, I've come to realize is that everything is everything is a choice. And now is the perfect time to bring up your favorite quote from that old Law and Order episode that the old DA said. Do you
Yeah,
want to say it or will I?
you should say it.
All right, so I don't forget the context, but basically, the DA says in politics, you have two choices: do something or do nothing. And doing nothing has less risk.
Right.
So I feel like that's part of it. That's half of it, obviously, that it would be like the system is so complicated, the healthcare system is complicated by design, I say, but also that there's so much money to be made that if you had a more efficient, streamlined system, if it was actually more efficient, it would actually be less profitable.
Well, you remember Bernie Sanders, who was not successful in communicating to the masses, the dumblocks, that yes, Medicare for all would cost $35 trillion. But the cost without Medicare is $150 trillion. And
Something like that.
that's what we're paying now.
Right.
Wouldn't it be more advantageous if it cost a third as much to Americans?
Sure, but socialist.
Yeah,
That's what they say.
socialist.
That's
Right.
what they say.
We only allow socialism in funding the oil companies, giving them money.
Oh, let's not. Oh, there's so much.
Yeah,
There's so
yeah,
much to say.
yeah. That's like the complaint from the Trump world. It's all the immigrants. They're all taking money. It's all costing me my tax dollars to give money to the poor immigrants. And I would always answer that complaint with saying that's about 1/20th of what it costs you in your tax dollars for subsidies to the corporations and the oil companies. And oh, by the way, they don't pay taxes, you pay their taxes.
Right. Let me look that up right now. I think like like the corporations that don't just not pay taxes, but they actually get tax rebates.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which a tax rebate means we're paying. It's coming out of our taxes.
All right. Let's see this right now. These 19 Fortune 100 companies paid next to nothing or nothing at all in taxes in 2011 or 2021. So let me just read it.
Yeah,
Amazon,
yeah.
current U.S. federal income tax expense 2.1 billion. Pre-tax U.S. earnings minus state and local taxes owed 35 billion. U.S. federal effective tax rate 6.1 billion. And my dyscalculia brain already has a headache just
Right.
from reading that.
Yeah.
For
Right.
those of for those of you who, if anyone ever actually listens to this, I promise to be an advocate for the dyscalculian Americans and dyscalculia people worldwide, which nobody knows, but dyscalculia is essentially math dyslexia. So my brain is unable to process mathematics the proper way, which also part of it is having bad spatial reasoning skills, which is why we're both always a little bit terrified every time I have to drive a car, which I've somehow managed to not have any serious accidents so far.
No, just minor damages to every one of my cars that you drive.
Yes, which, considering the situation, is a pretty good standard.
Okay.
So yes, so my dyscalculia can't process.
It's not like our cousins' kids who do major damages to the family cars.
Right, I've never totaled a car, so that's
Right.
something. So good.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about scams. Scam America.
Well, everything is a scam is supposed to be the point of this podcast. So which scam do you want to talk about?
So the first scam I can recall, without going into my early youth, was my early adulthood. I'm saying we're probably going back 50 plus years, when I had my first credit card. It was a MasterCard. And there was a class action suit against MasterCard, who was basically reporting on your monthly statements, the balance due, and in fractions of a penny, they would always round up. So if it was 1 cent and 1/3 of a cent, they would round it up to 2 cents. And you go, well, nobody would know that. The cardholder doesn't know that rounding up scenario. So the class action suit, the lawyers found that that's what MasterCard was doing. They were always rounding up partial pennies. You go, okay, what's the big deal? Well, they were sending out 55 million statements a month back in the 70s. 50 million roundups of the part of a penny ended up to be tens of millions of dollars. And the class action suit won, and we all got a refund. Not much, it was like $4 or $5. But again, when you look at the fact that there were 50 million of these going on, that showed you that there's a scam and you don't even know it. You're being scammed and you don't even know it, because it's impossible to even have determined that they were doing that to you.
Right.
So that was one of the earliest scams that I can recall personally.
Well, you know about economies of scale? Should we call that economies of scam?
Right. Yes. Very good.
Did we just come up with a new term? Economies of scam. So that's an economies of scam tactics. They just scam a shitload of people, very little, so they hope they don't understand. Which is kind of like the corporate version of I said about the car. It's like if you're going to scam someone, you have to scam them a little bit because they won't notice. So that's what. So now I want you to talk about your infamous back again in the 90s when you had car phones, how you got scammed.
Wait. I want to do one general before that. You and I came up with another term, which is a scam that you don't know about, and that scam is shrinkflation.
Shrinkflation.
That pound of coffee in that coffee can that you've always bought, look at it. It's not 16 ounces anymore. It's 13 and a half ounces.
For the record, I heard that from someone else, and I told you that. But yes, because shrinkflation is interesting because one of our relatives didn't believe it.
Right.
When you told them that. And then you said to her, go look at your can of coffee.
Yeah.
And then she's like, oh, okay.
Right.
It's less, she's buying less coffee. For the same amount of for the same cost she was paying.
No, she's paying more.
Well, technically, yeah. So that's another economies of scam tactic.
Right, economies of scam. All right, so the biggest scam in my list, the biggest, is the commendations I have for that vice president at Coca-Cola, who a couple of decades ago came up with a new product. And what he did, and Coke does, is they took their Coca-Cola soda and they took out the sugar and they took out the sweeteners and they took out the coloring and they took out the bubbles and they took everything out and called it Dasani and charged twice as much for this water than the soda was. The ultimate scamology. And that exists today.
So how does but why does that make sense? Like, how do they get away with charging more for it?
Well, that comes down to your manipulated, fried-brained consumers that think that the Dasani water is a product better than their soda. So I can pay more for that pure, unadulterated Dasani, which is basically their soda with everything taken out of it.
Yeah. I mean, and how many plastic bottles does that?
Oh, unbelievable. And it all comes from tap water.
Right. They're just selling us stuff that should be free.
Right. And that's a scam.
Isn't there that huge plastic vortex in the middle of the Pacific Ocean or something?
Yeah. The Pacific Gyre is just the size of Texas of floating plastic crap.
Let me see. Huge plastic vortex. Yep. Great Pacific Garbage Patch. This is from National Geographic 2022. It says the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is a collection of marine debris in the North Pacific Ocean, also known as the Pacific Trash Vortex. The garbage patch is actually two distinct collections of debris bounded by the massive North Pacific subtropical gyre.
The gyre, right.
Yeah.
So I was worried they dropped that term. It's a gyre.
80% of plastic in the ocean is estimated to come from land-based sources, with the remaining 20% coming from boats and other marine sources. A 2018 study found that synthetic fishing nets made up nearly half of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch due to the ocean current dynamics and increased fishing in the Pacific Ocean. Ugh. So you could you solidify all that plastic trash and make a new landmass if you wanted to somehow?
Well, better than that, there was a scientific PhD scientific woman from of Indian descent from India who developed a machine that would basically break down the plastic to its original petroleum base. So you could convert all of it back to oil and gasoline. I wonder who's preventing that.
Everyone,
Right.
basically.
Right. Yeah.
Or it's kind of like your big stick about electric cars and how it's not really as environmentally friendly as people think, because you're just kind of moving around because the energy is still produced from a non-renewable source. It just doesn't appear that way, and mostly because the batteries are the big problem with that.
Right. The batteries are a problem. The generation of the electricity, yes. There is hydropower, which is renewable, as long as there's a river current. But as we are seeing in Lake Mead in Nevada, those will soon be gone. They will dry up, and there'll be no Niagara Falls, and there'll be no Himalayan snow melts feeding the Ganges River. So that's in the future, coming sooner than we think.
I think that Vegas is going to be the first Walking Dead Mad Max city in America, because
absolutely.
When the river, and they use a lot of power, obviously.
Right.
So they're going to be the first ones that'll be just dead.
Dead.
Yeah.
No water. Sorry.
So what's going to happen to Las Vegas then?
And it'll close up. Like all the civilizations that disappeared the anthropologists and archaeologists basically find almost universally the death of civilizations has been droughts.
Hmm.
The Mexican civilizations, the Egyptian civilization, all of a sudden there's no water, so there's no there's no farms, so there's no food, so we better move away. As Sam Kinison once said, Lee J. What did he say?
I gotta when it, it's like you gotta go where the food is. Oh, basically. Yeah,
Go where the food is.
true.
Right.
True
So
story.
so that's what's going to happen in Las Vegas. They're all going to have to move to Oregon and Washington and British Columbia,
Well,
where there'll still be some rain.
so how much longer do you think people have to go to engage in debauchery and lose all their money in Vegas? How much longer does Vegas have?
50 years.
Oh, that's actually a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, live it up, kids.
All right, I think that's a
Or
perfect time.
or wait for the Chinese parents to come and fix it.
Right. I think that's a perfect time to stop for
Okay.
today. So our good valiant effort, you got to start sometime, somehow. Got to start
All right.
somewhere.
All
So
right.
here we are. All right, this is the beginning of our Everything is a Scamcast, and we'll certainly won't run out of topics to talk about because now we have economies of scam all over the place. All right. All right, take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.